The freezing rain had been falling for 6 hours straight when Cole Merritt almost killed a little girl on Highway 7. East Texas doesn't do winter the way the rest of the country does. It doesn't warn you. When an ice storm hits the piney woods, it arrives like an ambush, sudden, total, merciless. The kind of cold that coats the pine trees in glass and turns the county roads into mirrors. The Weather Service called it a historic freeze event. The locals called it a disaster, and they weren't wrong. Cole had been driving back from Nacogdoches, where he'd gone to pick up a rebuilt carburetor for a customer's truck. His own truck, a 15 Ford F250 with 180,000 miles and one cracked taillight, was handling the ice as well as anything could, which was to say barely. The wipers fought the freezing rain in long, rhythmic streaks. The headlights carved a pale tunnel through the dark. On either side of the highway, the pine trees were already bowing under the weight of the ice, their branches cracking in the stillness like something being slowly broken. He was thinking about Eli. His son would be at Debbie Ramos's house by now. Debbie was the retired school teacher 3 blocks over who watched Eli on late nights, fed him chili, let him stay up past his bedtime watching cartoons. Cole didn't mind. Eli needed softness in his life. There wasn't always enough of it at home, no matter how hard Cole tried. He was thinking about Eli when he saw the shape on the road. At first, his brain refused to process it. A shadow, maybe. A deer wandered out of the forest, the ice playing tricks with his vision. But his foot hit the brake before his mind finished the thought. Combat reflex, the same instinct that had saved him twice in Mosul. And the truck shuddered, fish-tailed, skidded hard to the left before the tires found something like purchase and ground to a stop, 2 feet from the child. She was standing perfectly still in the center of the lane, not running, not waving, just standing there in the freezing rain like she'd been placed there by something deliberate and cruel. She was small, 5 years old maybe, wearing a pale yellow nightgown soaked through and plastered to her tiny frame. No coat, no shoes. Her dark hair was flat against her face. Her feet were bare on the asphalt. And even from inside the truck, Cole could see the smears of red in the cone of his headlights. He sat for 1 breath, 2, then he moved. The door opened and the cold hit him like a wall. Freezing rain found the back of his neck, ran down his collar, and he pushed through it, boots sliding on the iced surface, keeping low. "Hey," he called, voice soft and steady, the same tone he used when Eli woke up from a nightmare in the dark. "Hey, sweetheart, I see you. I'm coming." She didn't run. She didn't speak. She just turned her head and looked at him with eyes that were enormous and dark and somewhere very far away from Highway 7. In her arms, pressed against her chest, she held a snow globe. The glass was cracked, not shattered, but fractured in a spiderweb pattern from base to top. The water had leaked out over what must have been days, leaving a dark ring on the front of her nightgown. But she held it the way other children hold stuffed animals, the way you hold the only thing you have left. Cole dropped to one knee on the wet asphalt. The cold burned through his jeans immediately. "My name's Cole. What's yours?" Her lips moved. Nothing came out the first time. Then, barely above the sound of the freezing rain, "Ava." "Ava. That's a real pretty name." He kept his voice slow, careful. "I'm going to pick you up now, okay? We need to get you out of this rain." She didn't answer, but she didn't pull away. And when Cole slid his arms beneath her and lifted her, she weighed almost nothing. Lighter than his ruck had been, lighter than the weight he'd carried home from overseas. And she folded into him with the automatic trust of a child who has run out of options and simply needs another human being to hold on to. She kept the snow globe. He ran back to the truck, got her into the passenger seat, cranked the heat to maximum and grabbed the wool blanket he kept behind the seat, the one Eli used on long drives, and wrapped it around her small, shaking body. He held her arms through the blanket, rubbing, trying to generate warmth, talking low and steady the whole time. "You're safe. I've got you. You're safe." Her lips moved again. This time he heard it clearly. I can't find Miss Carla. Cole Merritt had been 23 when he joined the Army. He'd grown up in Crockett, one of those East Texas towns that everyone who grows up in them spends their teenage years trying to leave. He'd left. 2 deployments in Iraq had a way of making you appreciate what you'd walked away from. The pine smell of the national forest in August, the particular quiet of a Wednesday morning on Main Street, the way the summer heat was honest about itself rather than ambushing you from a desert horizon. He'd come home and married Angela, who'd been his high school girlfriend and who'd waited, not because she'd promised to, but because she'd decided to. She laughed at his terrible jokes and made breakfast tacos that people drove 20 miles for. And she loved Eli from the moment they knew he was coming, with a certainty that made Cole feel like he finally understood what the word anchor meant. Then came the aneurysm. Angela had been 31, fine at breakfast, gone by noon. The doctor said it was fast, painless. They said it like that helped. Eli had been 3, now he was 7. Gap-toothed and relentless, obsessed with dinosaurs, afraid of thunder, and convinced that his father was basically a superhero. Cole knew better. He tried to be worthy of the title anyway. He ran his garage, Merritt's Auto, 2 bays and a lot of elbow grease, and he got Eli to school by 7:40 every morning and picked him up by 3:15 every afternoon without fail. He'd learned to make decent cornbread and terrible pasta, and genuinely good scrambled eggs. He'd learned to talk about feelings when Eli needed it, and to let silence do the work when he didn't. He'd learned that being a single parent was less about having the right answers and more about staying in the room. He knew what fear looked like on a child's face. He knew how to sit beside one and be the thing that keeps them from coming apart. He sat beside Ava now and tried. "Tell me about Miss Carla," he said, one hand on the wheel, navigating the ice carefully, the other resting close to Ava, ready if she needed steadying. "She takes care of me." Ava's voice was thin, slow, the cold working its way deeper. "When Mommy has meetings." "Your mommy works a lot?" "Yes, but she reads to me sometimes, at night. She does the voices." A pause, then softer. "I like the voices. My son Eli, he's 7, he always wants me to do voices too. I'm not very good at it." It wasn't entirely true, but it made Ava's mouth curve slightly at the corners. "I usually end up sounding like a confused robot." "I'm 5, Ava said softly. "Almost 6. "Almost 6 is pretty much 6. He kept her talking, watching for the signs. Decreasing shiver response, slurred speech, eyes going glassy. Her shivering had already started to slow, which was bad. "Ava, do you remember where you were before the road? Before you started walking?" Her face clouded. "We stopped. Miss Carla stopped the car." Ava's voice hitched. "She said bad people were coming. She was crying. She told me to hide in the trees and count to 1,000 and she'd come back." The tears came now, slow and silent, mixing with the rain on her cheeks. "I counted lots of times. She didn't come back." Cole's mind ran the scenarios the way it always did, fast and cold and clinical. A nanny fleeing in the middle of the night, crying, talking about bad people, hiding the child and failing to return. None of the scenarios that assembled themselves were innocent, and every one of them pointed towards something bigger and more dangerous than an East Texas ice storm. "You did exactly right," he said. "You were so brave, Ava. Miss Carla would be so proud of you." He didn't say the rest of what he was thinking. "We're almost to town. We're going to get you warm, and we're going to find your mommy." Ava looked at him with those serious, dark eyes. "Promise?" Cole Merritt had no business making that promise. He made it anyway. Crockett in a freezing rain was ghostly. Main Street was empty, the one stoplight swaying in the wind, the diner dark. Cole pulled in front of the sheriff's office, flat brick, sandwiched between the hardware store and the barber shop, and carried Ava through the rain and through the door. Deputy Roy Tatum looked up from his desk. His face went through a quick sequence. Confusion, alarm, action. "Good Lord," Roy breathed, already reaching for the phone. "Where'd you find her?" Highway 7, 15 miles out, standing in the road. Sheriff Dale Pruitt emerged from his back office. 56, wide-shouldered, gray mustache, the unhurried manner of a man who had dealt with every kind of crisis a small Texas county could produce and been surprised by none of it in a very long time. But the sight of a soaking child in a nightgown made his eyes sharpen to points. "Roy, Dr. Park, now! Tell her it's an emergency." He was already moving, clearing the waiting room couch with one arm. Cole laid Ava down carefully, the wool blanket still around her. She was barely conscious now. The cracked snow globe rested against her chest, still in her hands. "Her name is Ava," Cole said. "She's from Houston, 5 years old, almost 6. Her nanny was driving her somewhere in the middle of the night, told her to hide in the trees and never came back. She's been out there a while, Dale. Her feet are bad." Dale looked at her feet. He kept his expression neutral, but Cole saw his jaw tighten once and then settle. Dr. Lena Park arrived in 14 minutes, fast for a county with 1 clinic and 1 doctor. She was 42, precise, efficient, the kind of physician who assessed 3 things at once without appearing to hurry. She set her bag on the coffee table and got to work without preamble. Moderate hypothermia, early frostbite on the toes and heels, dehydration, mild malnutrition. This child hasn't eaten properly in days. She pulled a heated blanket from her bag and began layering. She looked up at Cole once. "You found her when you did. Another hour in these temperatures and we'd be having a very different conversation." Cole felt the weight of that settle into his chest and stay there. Roy came back from his computer, and the expression on his face had changed. Something had drained out of it. "Sheriff, you need to see this." He held up his tablet. On the screen was a breaking news alert, the kind with a professional headshot and a headline that changed the temperature of the room. Harmon Energy CEO Diane Harmon offers $8 million reward for safe return of missing daughter. The photograph showed a woman in her late 30s, polished, precise, dark hair, sharp eyes, the particular kind of composure that comes from running a $9 billion company. Cole looked at the photograph. Then he looked at Ava, asleep under the heated blanket, the cracked snow globe still cradled in her small hands. "Ava Harmon," Roy said quietly. 5 years old, disappeared from the family's Houston penthouse 4 days ago along with her nanny, Carla Webb. He scrolled. "FBI's been on it from day 1, treating it as a kidnapping." He stopped scrolling. His voice dropped. "And this morning, a county deputy found a woman's body in a creek off Farm Road 2024, about 60 miles north of here." The room went still. "Carla Webb," Dale said. "Single gunshot wound, back of the head, found 3 hours ago." Cole stared at the floor. He thought about a woman crying in a car in the middle of the night, telling a 5-year-old to hide in the trees and count to 1,000. Not a kidnapper covering her tracks. Someone running from something that had caught up with her anyway. "We need to call the FBI," Dale said. "Wait." Cole held up a hand. Dale looked at him. "Why did she run? If someone was trying to kidnap Ava, why didn't Carla call the police? She had 4 days, 200 miles. She had time." He shook his head. "She didn't call because she didn't trust the call to stay quiet. She thought whoever was coming had money, connections, reach, the kind of reach that makes phone calls disappear." Dale was quiet. He looked at Ava. He looked at the tablet. He set it on the desk. "I have protocol," he said finally. "I have a federal investigation, a woman's body, and a billionaire offering $8 million. My hands aren't free here, Walker." "Keep Ava here tonight," Cole said. "Let her warm up. Think before we move." He paused. "That's all I'm asking." Dale thought about it. It felt longer than it was. "Fine. Roy stays on the door. Dr. Park stays with the girl. I'll make the calls. Discreetly." He gave Cole a long look. "And you've done your good deed for the night. Go home to your boy. Eli's at Debbie's. He's fine." Cole pulled a chair up next to the couch. "I'm not leaving her alone." Dale shook his head slowly, like a man who had stopped being surprised by Cole Merritt years ago. He went to his office and closed the door. Outside, the freezing rain continued its patient work on East Texas. Ava woke just after midnight. Cole had been half dozing in the chair, one eye open the way veterans learn to sleep, when he heard the small, sharp sound of a child who doesn't know where she is. He was beside the couch before she'd fully opened her eyes. Hey, it's me, Cole. Remember? I found you on the road." Recognition came slowly. Then, "Where's Miss Carla?" There it was, the question that had been waiting in the room for hours. How do you answer it? What do you owe a 5-year-old who's been through more than most adults will ever face? He thought about honesty, and about mercy, and about the distance between them. "Miss Carla had to go," he said carefully, "but she made sure you were safe first. She did everything right. She loved you very much, Ava." Ava's face crumpled, sudden and total and devastating the way only a child's can. "I want my mommy." "I know. We're working on that. Your mommy is looking for you right now. She's going to be so happy when she finds out you're okay." Dr. Park appeared with a thermos of warm broth she'd heated on the ancient office microwave. She held the cup while Ava sipped, watching color come back into the girl's cheeks by degrees. Cole sat across from her and let her lead. "What's in the snow globe?" he asked. Ava looked down at the cracked globe in her lap. "A carousel. A little tiny one, with horses that used to spin." She shook it carefully, the way you handle something already broken. What was left of the water moved sluggishly. "Miss Carla gave it to me. She said even when things break, the thing inside can still be beautiful." Cole didn't say anything for a moment. He just nodded. "My son Eli has a dinosaur he's had since he was 2, missing one leg. He won't give it up. Says it just means the dinosaur survived something." Ava almost smiled. "What's the dinosaur's name?" "Gerald." "That's a funny name for a dinosaur." "Eli thought so too. That was kind of the point." They talked for a while after that, about Eli's school, about Ava's drawings. She liked to draw horses, she said, and carousels, and she was going to draw the carousel from the snow globe someday when she got better at circles. Her mother brought her hot chocolate every Sunday morning. The Diane Harmon that Ava described, the one who did voices when she read, who always came to say goodnight even when she'd been in meetings all day, sounded nothing like a villain. She sounded like a mother losing the war between ambition and love, and knowing it, and not knowing how to stop. Cole held on to that thought. It made what came later more complicated. When Ava drifted back to sleep, Dr. Park pulled Cole aside. "The frostbite is manageable. She'll have some sensitivity in those toes for a while, but she'll heal fully." She kept her voice low. Whoever was driving her, they kept her as warm as they could for as long as they could. The way the frostbite progressed, Ava was in some kind of vehicle or shelter until maybe 10, 12 hours before you found her. She paused. "Carla Webb didn't abandon that child for nothing. She was buying time." Cole nodded. He'd already known. He just needed someone else to say it out loud. Dale came out of his office around 1 a.m. "FBI is en route. Mother's coming too." A pause. "Helicopter. In this weather?" "Front's breaking up. And when you're worth $9 billion, Walker, the weather is mostly an inconvenience." The helicopter came in at 1:40 in the morning, dropping out of the clearing sky like a falling star, its lights cutting through the last of the clouds. Roy went out to guide it down to the empty lot behind the feed store that served as the county's unofficial emergency landing pad. Cole stood in the doorway of the sheriff's office and watched 3 people cross the wet gravel toward him. 2 men. Broad-shouldered, close-cropped, the posture of private security. And between them, a woman who looked nothing like her photograph. Diane Harmon on the cover of Texas Business Monthly was carved from ambition. The woman crossing the gravel at 1:40 in the morning looked like someone running on fear and prayer and 4 days without sleep, someone who had held herself together through pure will, and was about 100 feet from the moment that will finally failed. Her dark hair was loose and wind-whipped. She wore a fleece pullover and jeans. No trace of the executive. She came through the door, and the first thing she did was look. Her eyes swept the room, frantic, searching, And then they found Ava on the couch, and the sound that came out of Diane Harmon was something Cole didn't have a word for. Not a scream, not a sob, something deeper. The sound of 4 days of compressed terror finally finding release. She crossed the room in seconds and went to her knees beside the couch, hands hovering over her daughter's face like she was afraid the image might dissolve if she touched it too quickly. "Ava," she whispered. "Oh, baby." Ava stirred, her eyes opened, and her face did the thing that made Cole have to look away for a second. That total, overwhelming relief. Every muscle in that small body releasing at once. "Mommy!" Diane gathered her in, careful of her bandaged feet, and held on. Nobody in the room spoke. Some moments don't belong to witnesses. Doctor Park approached quietly after a few minutes and walked Diane through the medical situation. Diane listened with her hand never leaving her daughter's back. When the doctor finished, Diane looked up, and her eyes found Cole. "You found her?" "Yes, ma'am." She stood and crossed to him, and before Cole could react, she pulled him into an embrace that shook with everything she'd been holding for 4 days. He stood there and let her. Didn't know what else to do. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet. "Thank you. I don't have words for it." She shook her head. "The odds of someone being on that road, in that storm." "I was in the right place," Cole said. "You were paying attention when it would have been easier not to be." Her voice cracked slightly. "You gave me back everything that matters." Sheriff Dale stepped forward with his practiced combination of courtesy and authority. "Miss Harmon, I need to ask you a few questions before we can release your daughter." Something moved in Diane's face. The vulnerability tucked itself away, a door closing, professionally smooth. "The FBI is handling the investigation. I've given them a complete statement." "Carla Webb," Cole said. Diane's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. Almost. "Carla made a serious mistake. She had financial difficulties, personal problems. The FBI believes she was working with someone, a ransom arrangement that fell apart." "That's not what Ava told me." Diane looked at him steadily. "Ava is 5. Ava is 5, and she told me that Carla was crying, that she talked about bad people coming, that she told Ava to hide in the trees and come back for her." Cole held her gaze. "That's not a kidnapper covering their tracks. That's someone trying to protect a child." The room was very quiet. One of Diane's security men shifted his weight slightly. Diane raised one hand and he went still. "Mr. Merritt," she said, "you don't understand what you've stepped into." "Then explain it to me." A long moment. Diane turned and looked at Ava, who was watching them both with the quiet attention of a child who understands more than the adults in the room want to give her credit for. "The truth," Diane said finally, "is that someone came for my daughter. Carla was caught in the middle. She made a terrible choice and now she's dead." She looked back at Cole. "That's all the truth you need." Cole held her gaze. He didn't believe her. He didn't think she expected him to. Diane sat with Ava for the next hour, just the two of them. Cole watched from across the room and saw the Billionaire CEO disappear completely, layer by layer, until what was left was a mother and her child, talking quietly in the small hours. Diane's hand smoothing Ava's hair over and over in that unconscious, automatic gesture that probably happened 1,000 times before it was ever deliberate. Around 3 a.m., after a muted argument with Dr. Park about transfer options, Diane made clear she was taking Ava back to Houston on the helicopter with a private medical team standing by. She was not negotiating. Dr. Park was not happy. She prepared discharge instructions with the crisp efficiency of someone losing a professional argument they know they can't win. Cole was getting coffee from the break room's ancient pot when Diane found him. She looked exhausted, but the sharpness was back in her eyes. The focused intelligence of someone who has managed enormous power for a long time and doesn't fully turn it off even when they want to. "Sheriff Pruitt tells me you're a single father," she said. "That's right." "Then you understand." Her voice was even, measured. "You know what it means to look at your child and know that every choice you make is about keeping them safe. That you would do things you're not proud of, if it meant they got to come home. I know what it means, Cole said carefully. Then you know that parents make compromises. We carry weight so our children don't have to. I also know, Cole said, that Carla Webb carried weight so Ava didn't have to, and she ended up in a creek off a farm road 60 miles from here. Diane's eyes flinched, just barely, just once. She reached into the pocket of her pullover and produced an envelope. She held it out. Cole didn't take it. There's a check inside, she said. $400,000. For your son's education, for your business, a new roof, early retirement, whatever you need. She kept it extended. I'm not saying this to be condescending. I know what that kind of money means to someone in your position, and I know what I'm asking in return is real. A pause. The FBI investigation into my company is built on misinformation from a woman who was not stable. It will be resolved. When it is, I'd appreciate your discretion about what happened that night. Cole looked at the envelope. $400,000. He thought about Eli's future. He thought about the garage roof that had needed replacing for 2 years. He thought about the vacation he hadn't taken since Angela died. He thought about Carla Webb lying in a creek with 60 miles still left to go. He pushed the envelope back toward Diane. I don't want your money, he said. Her expression shifted. Surprise quickly reabsorbed. Then what do you want? I want Ava to be safe. Not bodyguard safe, not helicopter safe. Safe from whatever it is you're carrying that's dangerous enough to get a woman killed. He held her gaze. Whatever is sitting in the center of your company, fix it. Not with lawyers. Fix it for real. Because that little girl deserves a mother who's free, not just rich. Diane stood very still for a moment. Then, quietly, so quietly it almost didn't register, you think it's simple. You think I had a choice at the beginning of this. I think you're still making one now. The envelope went back into her pocket. Her expression had gone somewhere he couldn't follow. When she spoke again, her voice was lower than it had been all night. Carla was the best thing in my daughter's life, she said. In some ways, she was the best thing in mine, too. She stopped. That's all I can tell you. She walked back to her daughter. Cole stood in the break room doorway and watched her go and thought about the weight of the things people carry when they've made choices they can't unmake. He thought about it for a long time. They loaded Ava onto the helicopter just before 4 a.m. Wrapped in blankets, the cracked snow globe tucked beside her, she was half asleep and unhurried. Cole crouched next to her while they prepped the transfer. You going to draw that carousel when you get home? He asked. Mm-hmm. Eyes barely open. I'm going to draw Gerald the dinosaur, too. He'll be honored. Ava reached out and held his hand for a moment. Thank you for finding me. Thank you for standing still so I could. She smiled, small, real, exhausted, and let go. Cole stood. Diane was watching him from the doorway. She didn't say anything. She nodded once, just once, and then she followed her daughter out into the dark. He stood in the doorway of the sheriff's office and watched the helicopter lift off. Its lights made circles on the wet ground as it rose, tilted south, and moved toward Houston. He watched until there was nothing left but the thinning clouds and the dripping of melting ice off the pine trees. Hell of a night, Dale said from behind him. It's not over, Cole said. He could feel it the way he'd always felt things in the field. The certainty that lives below logic, the knowledge that something is still moving in the dark. Dale sighed. Go home to your boy, Walker. Cole went home. Eli was asleep on Debbie's couch, blanket pulled to his chin, a plastic dinosaur tucked under one arm. Cole sat in the armchair across from him for a while, just watching, just grateful. 12 days later, Cole was lying under a 17 Silverado, wrestling with a seized caliper, when his phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Mr. Merritt, a woman's voice. Controlled, precise. The voice of someone who chose words the way a surgeon chooses instruments. This is Special Agent Karen Fossey, FBI. I need to speak with you about Ava Harmon. Cole rolled out from under the truck and sat up on the creeper. Is Ava okay? Physically, yes. But I need you to meet me at the Crockett Sheriff's Office in 90 minutes. There are things you need to know." "What kind of things?" "Not over the phone. 90 minutes, Mr. Merritt, please." She hung up. Karen Fossey was 44, focused still, with the particular intensity Cole associated with people who had spent years hunting dangerous individuals and had become precise as a result. She sat across from him in Dale's office with a tablet and a legal pad, and she got straight to the point. "Tell me everything Ava said to you. Everything. About what happened. About Carla. About her home." Cole told her. She listened without interrupting, making careful notes. When he finished, she sat back. "What I'm about to share is part of an active federal investigation. It doesn't leave this room." "Understood." Carla Webb was not just a nanny. Fossey turned her tablet to face him. 5 years ago, Carla was a forensic accountant at a firm doing contract work for Harmon Energy. She found irregularities, evidence that the company had been paying Texas state regulators to suppress findings of groundwater contamination near several of their drilling operations. East Texas, South Texas. The numbers are significant. Thousands of households. Aquifers feeding into municipal water systems. She paused. She contacted our office 8 months ago. She'd been gathering documentation since she left the accounting firm. She'd taken the nanny position specifically to stay close to evidence she believed existed in Diane Harmon's private records. Cole felt the cold work its way into his chest. "Someone inside the company found out," Fossey continued. 3 weeks ago, Carla called me in a panic, said people had come to the penthouse, said she didn't know if Ava was safe. I told her to bring the girl to a safe house in Waco." Fossey closed the tablet. "She made it as far as Houston County. She called me twice on the road. After that, nothing. We found her car abandoned near a Forest Service road, and Carla was found in a creek 6 miles away." Cole stared at the desk. "Diane Harmon." "That's the question." Fossey's voice was careful. "By every external measure, Diane Harmon is clean. Built her company from near nothing, impeccable reputation, no criminal record. But Harmon Energy's growth over the last 4 years has been unusual. Government contracts that bypassed competitive bidding, environmental reviews cleared in a fraction of the normal time. And Carla's documentation, what we've recovered of it, points to the executive level." She looked at Cole directly. "Whether Diane ordered what happened to Carla, or whether she's protecting someone inside her own organization, or whether she's a victim of people operating around her, we don't know. Not yet. But she offered me $400,000 to stay quiet." Fossey's eyes sharpened. "She offered you what?" Cole told her about the break room, about the envelope, about the conversation, word for word as best he could reconstruct it. Fossey wrote quickly and said nothing until he was done. "Did you take the money?" "No." She studied him for a moment. "That's either very principled or very dangerous." "That's what she said." Fossey set her pen down. "Mr. Merritt, Carla Webb was a trained investigator with direct contact to our office and resources Carla had built over 8 months, and she still ended up in a creek 60 miles from her destination. You are a single father running a 2-bay garage in a town of 900 people." She held his gaze. "The people Carla was afraid of are still out there. And you were present when Diane Harmon took her daughter back. You heard the conversation. You turned down the money." She paused. "In certain circles, that makes you a problem." "Are you telling me I'm in danger?" "I'm telling you to be careful. Don't discuss this with anyone. If anyone contacts you about that night, you call me immediately." She slid a card across the desk. "Day or night?" Cole picked it up. "And Ava, is she actually safe?" Fossey's expression softened, slightly, the way a controlled person softens when something real gets through. "Ava is surrounded by more private security than most public officials. Whatever else Diane Harmon is or isn't, she will not let anything happen to that child." A pause. "But Ava is living with someone at the center of a federal investigation, and until we have enough to move, our hands are tied. Diane Harmon has an army of lawyers and $9 billion. We can't take a child away based on the word of a dead whistleblower." Cole sat with that. He thought about Ava and the snow globe and the carousel inside that was still intact despite everything. "Keep the card," Fossey said, standing. "And Mr. Merritt," she paused at the door, "what you did that night mattered. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise, even if the consequences turn out to be complicated." She left. Cole sat in Dale's empty office and thought about Carla Webb, who'd carried a secret through 5 years of a job she'd taken specifically to carry it, who'd died 60 miles short of the person she was trying to reach. He thought about what that kind of commitment looked like, what it cost. And he thought about Ava, 5 years old, in a cracked glass world, holding on to the carousel that used to spin. 2 months passed. Crockett thawed. The ice storm became a story people told at the hardware store, the way Texans tell weather stories. Bigger every time, more dramatic, the ice somehow deeper in the retelling. Cole fixed trucks, changed oil, ordered Eli off his bike twice for going too fast on the hill behind the house. He watched the news the way you watch a wound, checking for change, braced for something worse. Harmon Energy appeared in a Wall Street Journal piece about the energy sector's winter recovery. Diane Harmon gave an interview to a Houston business magazine in which she mentioned briefly the terror of nearly losing her daughter and the courage of a stranger in East Texas who had found Ava in the storm. She didn't name him. Cole was grateful for that. Agent Fossey called once, 6 weeks after their meeting, to ask about something Ava had mentioned during his time with her. Something about a blue folder that Carla kept in a locked drawer. Cole didn't know anything about a blue folder. He said so. Fossey thanked him and hung up, and Cole spent the next week wondering what was in it and whether it had made it to someone who mattered. The FBI investigation into Harmon Energy never made the front page. Whatever happened, happened in the kinds of rooms where things get resolved quietly, where the cost of disclosure is weighed against the cost of continued exposure and someone runs the numbers. Cole didn't know the outcome. He suspected he'd never know all of it. He kept Fossey's card in his wallet anyway. Then, on a Saturday morning in late March, a package arrived at the garage. No return address, padded envelope, hand-delivered. Roy later confirmed someone had dropped it at the sheriff's office front desk at 7 a.m. before anyone was in. Inside was a drawing, crayon on white cardstock, a carousel drawn with surprising care for a child's hand. The horses had faces, and the center pole had tiny stars on it. Beside the carousel stood 2 stick figures, one tall and one small. The small one with dark curly hair and a circle in her hands that was clearly meant to be the snow globe. In the corner, in careful, slightly wobbly letters, "Thank you for finding me. Love, Ava." Beneath the drawing was a photograph. Ava at a playground, laughing mid-air on a swing, hair flying, face wide open with the uncomplicated joy that belongs specifically to children and belongs to them less and less as they grow. On the back, in adult handwriting, clean, precise, controlled, "She's healing because of you. D.H. Cole." Pinned the drawing to the wall of the garage bay. Not the office, the bay, where he worked every day, where he could see it through the smears and oil and the ordinary accumulation of a life spent fixing what other people couldn't. It stayed there. Summer came to East Texas with its usual total authority. Heat that sat on your chest like something deliberate. Evenings that smelled like pine resin and the particular sweetness of cut grass after afternoon rain. Eli started 2nd grade in September and announced that his teacher was pretty strict but actually okay. Cole replaced the garage roof. He took Eli to Galveston for 4 days in July, and they stood at the water's edge one morning and watched the Gulf move, and Eli said out of nowhere, "Dad, is the ocean ever scared?" "Of what?" "Of being so big." Cole thought about it. "I think maybe the ocean's bigness is the reason it's not scared," he said. "It's big enough to hold everything." Eli considered this with the seriousness of a 7-year-old processing something that mattered to him. Then he nodded and went back to looking for shells. Cole stood at the water's edge a moment longer. He thought about Ava in Houston, in her tower above Galveston Bay, drawing carousels and sleeping without nightmares, hopefully. He thought about Carla Webb, who'd carried a truth through 5 years of careful, patient courage, and who had died 60 miles short of the person she was trying to reach. He thought about what that kind of commitment cost, and what it meant, and whether it had mattered in the end. He thought about the envelope he hadn't taken. Not with pride, he wasn't built for pride about that. More like the quiet satisfaction of a man who'd looked at a choice and found out who he was. The cracked snow globe sat on his workbench in the garage. He hadn't meant to keep it. Ava must have left it behind in the rush of the departure, or maybe Diane had left it deliberately, a kind of acknowledgement. But there it was, the carousel inside still visible through the fractured glass, the tiny horses permanent in their positions, mid-gallop, never reaching the ground, permanently in motion. He'd meant to send it back. He kept choosing not to. Some things survive being shattered. The thing inside can still be beautiful. Cole had stopped when it would have been easier to drive past. He had picked up a child when he didn't know her name, her story, or what it would cost him. He had turned down money that could have changed his life, not because he was saintly, he wasn't, but because something in him had decided, quietly and without announcement, that there was a version of himself he wanted to be able to explain to Eli someday. A version that made sense. A version that could look at that drawing on the garage wall and feel like it belonged there. Not a hero, just a man who stopped. That's all it ever is. Not the ones in the movies. Not the ones with perfect timing and speeches written for them. The real ones are quieter than that. A single father working a late shift in a Texas ice storm. A nanny carrying a truth that was bigger than her survival. A woman who told a 5-year-old that even broken things can hold something beautiful, and then proved it by protecting her with everything she had. The snow melts. Spring comes. Life moves forward the way life always does. Steady, indifferent, full of chances. And somewhere in Houston, in a tower above the bay, a little girl is drawing carousels with a steady hand. She's learning to sleep through the night. She's learning that the people who love her don't always have to be perfect. They just have to stay. She's healing. Cole Merritt is part of the reason. Not all of it, but part. And on the wall of a 2-bay garage in East Texas, there's a crayon drawing of a carousel with tiny stars on the pole, and 2 stick figures standing in front of it, one tall, one small. And it costs nothing, and it means everything. That's the math that matters. That's the only math that does. Every one of us will face a moment on a dark road when we have to decide whether to stop or keep driving. Sometimes the stakes aren't a child in a storm. Sometimes they're smaller. A friend who needs someone to say, "I see you." A decision that costs us something real. A chance to be honest when it would be easier not to be. But the shape of the choice is always the same. What Carla Webb understood, and what Cole Merritt understood in his own way, is this. The value of doing the right thing is not measured by whether it gets recognized, whether it gets rewarded, or whether it even gets resolved cleanly. It is measured by the fact that you chose it, and that something in the world was different because you did. You can't always fix what's broken, but you can choose to hold it carefully while it heals. And sometimes that's the whole thing. Sometimes that's everything.